Hi. This is a nice place. I like the extra dimension. Today we'll be taking a look at
Exodemon.
a retro FPS, where you control an amalgamation of a man and a dangerous exoskeletal demon creature that can claw with his left hand and shoot with his right by clicking opposite mouse buttons. Oh. So, Exodemon is part of a breed of game that is becoming ever more rare as time goes on. A retro FPS without any roguelike elements. Nothing is randomized. If you die, you reload back, at a checkpoint in this case, and it's just a pure Doom standard retro FPS, which I love. Not to say anything against the idea of merging those two genres or any of the games that have done so in the past, but sometimes you just want to get back to basics, so here we are. Now, getting into the gameplay, when it comes to this extremely nostalgic subgenre, the biggest thing, even more important than the gunplay in my eyes, is the movement. And Exodemon's movement is top-notch. It's fast, it's fluid, and it just plain feels right. There was no acclimation period for me. I immediately felt at home, and that's an amazing feat when you consider the caliber of games it's being matched up against. I expected at least one thing to feel off in this because of my experience with these types of games, but no. It sends you right back to 93. That's the year Doom released. I mean, it's not the year I played it, but I don't think anyone would get that reference. But yeah, the movement's great. I mean, I'd like to critique something here, but when something this simple is well executed, there's not a whole lot to talk about. So, I'll just move into the gunplay. Something with a lot more talking points. So first off, the feel of the guns is a little weaker than I'm used to, more akin to low-impact energy weapons than the conventional ballistic fare, though the grenade launcher and shotgun equivalents do have a little more oomph to them. I mean, they do make the problem go away. But overall, I would say the shooting itself is slightly less satisfying than most retro FPS. The flow of combat while shooting, on the other hand, is great. Kind of. It's complicated. So essentially, because the ammo of each gun is unique and the ammo capacity of your weapons is fairly small, you sort of get into this rhythm of constantly switching weapons and finishing off enemies with your claw attack when you can, because that makes them drop more ammunition. And I really like that combat flow. When it happens. Which is most of the time, but weapons are treated as permanent upgrades and are therefore pretty sparse. As far as I could tell, there are 3 copies of each of the 6 weapons scattered throughout the game, with duplicates upgrading their respective weapon. And because of that, early levels are pretty limited in what you can do. I mean, the levels are designed with that in mind, so there's not a difficulty problem. I just think the beginning levels drag on a bit, because you're kind of just doing one thing. Which is something I wouldn't care as much about if there was more game options. And by that, I mean any. Now, to be clear, because this is very important to me, the actual options menu is bellissimo. But I'm more talking about a level select or difficulty settings. Things that would add or enhance replayability, because as it stands, having to go through the entire game again if you want to run through a certain level without even being able to up the challenge is... it's just a bummer! Picking and choosing levels is how I primarily play these games. And I understand the way progression in this game works makes a level select more difficult to implement, but regardless, not having one is a pretty big hit to any future enjoyment I might have. And also the coherency of this next segment. So, level design. I would have to go through this game in its entirety several more times to fully understand what's happening here. One thing I'm sure of is it's unique. And normally when someone says that, it's a bad thing. But the weird part is, I'm not sure it is. There's quite a few memorable and fun levels. This lava one, for instance, was very interesting. And then if you want to look at design practices, there's the standard of having cyclical design in the levels. Areas tend to end where they started, having unlocked a new way to go, which is a pretty normal thing. But I can't shake the feeling that something's off, and I hate not being able to describe what it is, because I'm not sure it's a bad thing. It could be good and I'm just not used to it, or it could be bad, like this. I hate this level. For some reason. Listen, I told you this wasn't gonna make sense. The level design is just intangibly strange, but I did have fun, and I do like how varied the environments are. A lot of modern takes on this genre just go pure corridor shooter, but there's a really good mix here. And I've got to say that variety seems to have been somewhat of a focus in the making of Exodemon, from the levels to the enemies, almost in the same quantity. It seems every level they're adding a new enemy type, and not just for the sake of aesthetics either. In fact, I'd say it doesn't add much to that at all. It's kind of like the modern automotive industry. Everything just looks the same.
But there are a lot of them.
And more importantly, they all have a part to play, each one adding a new challenge you have to overcome. Now, the capabilities of the enemies are never radically different. You know, the biggest difference you'll find is if their attacks are ranged or not, but the best way for you to deal with each of them is different. And so introducing new members to the hordes you're fighting always adds some challenge. There's always an exception. Least threatening, explosive enemy ever. How do you live with yourself? Got me there. Yeah. Anyways, that's pretty much every aspect of the game. But unfortunately, we do need to talk about performance. It's not great. I have a 144Hz monitor, and with the frame rate unlocked, it tends to stick to 60, which, you know, at least it does that. But also, it doesn't. There are some pretty severe frame drops that happen. It didn't happen to me that many times, but it was too many. And so that's something to consider. Other than that, though, there's no question in my mind that Exodemon is worth the asking price. It's $7. American ones. And in return, you get roughly 3 hours of pure retro FPS action. Which, to be fair, is something I'm always going to be down for. This is my most beloved genre of video game, so I'm a little biased, but I would say at both extremes. I was always going to enjoy this game. It would have taken some extreme fumbling for me not to, but I have so many established preconceptions about what should be in a game like this that I'm laser focused on any chinks in that armor, so to speak. And honestly, I think those two things kind of balance out. So in closing, yeah, it's a good game.
Activated.
What is this?